The rain came down in heavy sheets, turning the quiet mountain road into a blur of darkness and water. Ava Sinclair gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white. She had stayed late again, another meeting, another deal sealed, another night spent proving that she was the woman no one could outmatch. The youngest CEO in her company's history, feared by competitors, admired by investors, and utterly alone. Her phone buzzed beside her. She glanced at the screen for a second, just 1 second, and the tires hit a slick patch. The car spun wildly, headlights cutting across the wet black road before crashing into a tree with a deafening crunch. The world tilted, glass shattered, and everything went silent except the hiss of rain. When Ava's eyes fluttered open, she was no longer in her car. The scent of wood smoke filled her senses, the sound of crackling fire mixed with the distant patter of rain on a roof. She tried to move, but pain shot through her legs like fire. Her heart began to race. She was lying on a couch, covered with a wool blanket she didn't recognize. "Hello," her voice trembled, barely a whisper. "Where am I?" Footsteps creaked on the wooden floor. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped into the room, wearing worn jeans and a flannel shirt. His dark hair was damp, his eyes deep and calm but guarded. He carried a tray with a bowl of soup. Ava's fear spiked. "Please, don't hurt me, I can't walk," she begged, her voice breaking. She tried to push herself back against the couch, her body trembling with exhaustion. The man froze, then slowly set the tray down on the table. "Hey," he said softly, his voice deep but gentle. "You're safe. My name's Ethan. I found you on the road last night. You were unconscious. My daughter and I brought you here." Ava's breathing came fast and shallow. "Your daughter?" From behind the door, a small face peeked in, a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with big brown eyes and a shy smile. She held a stuffed bunny close to her chest. "Hi," the girl whispered. "Daddy said you're hurt." Ava's panic began to ease, just a little. The firelight flickered across the cabin walls, casting warm shadows on the wooden beams. The place was small but cozy, simple, safe. Not the kind of world she knew. Ethan pulled a chair close but kept his distance. "You've got a few bruises, maybe a sprain. I checked your legs, nothing broken, I think. But you're in shock. You need rest." Ava swallowed hard, her voice weak. You could have left me out there." He met her gaze quietly. "Yeah, I could have." Silence hung in the air, filled only by the crackle of the fire and the rain outside. For the first time in years, Ava Sinclair didn't know what to say. She wasn't the one giving orders now. She wasn't the one in control. She was just a broken woman in a stranger's home, saved by a man who asked for nothing. And somewhere deep inside her chest, a strange feeling stirred, fear, gratitude, and something she hadn't felt in a long time, trust trying to be born. The days passed slowly inside the small cabin, each one blending into the next with the sound of rain tapping against the roof and the smell of pinewood burning in the fireplace. Ava Sinclair, once the unshakable head of a corporate empire, found herself trapped in a body that no longer obeyed her will. Her legs ached constantly, her movements limited to shifting between the couch and the wooden chair by the fire. Every time she tried to stand, pain clawed up her spine and left her trembling. Ethan was always there, quiet, steady, almost impossible to read. He'd built a life of routines, chopping wood at dawn, cooking simple meals, teaching his daughter to read by the firelight. His world was stripped of noise, free from the rush and tension that had ruled Ava's life. Yet, in that calm, she found herself both comforted and restless. Lily, his daughter, became her little shadow. Every morning, she'd run to Ava with wildflowers or pebbles she'd found outside, her laughter echoing through the cabin. Ava didn't know how to handle the affection at first. She was used to boardrooms, not children, to schedules, not stories. But when Lily climbed onto the couch beside her one afternoon and handed her a drawing of Ava with magic legs, something inside her cracked. "Magic legs?" Ava asked, trying to hide her emotion behind a faint smile. "So you can walk again soon," Lily said proudly. "Daddy says strong people always get back up." Ava looked toward Ethan, who was fixing a broken lantern near the table. His hands were rough, his movements steady and precise. She wondered what kind of man could live so simply after what he'd been through. That night, when Lily was asleep, Ava tried again to lift herself. Her arms shook, her legs refused to move, and frustration spilled over. "Damn it," she hissed, slamming her palms against the armrest. Ethan looked up from where he sat by the fire. "You shouldn't push yourself too hard." She turned her glare on him. I've never had anyone tell me what I should or shouldn't do. He didn't flinch. Then maybe that's part of the problem. The word stung. No one spoke to her like that, not her assistants, not her partners, not even her father when he was alive. Ethan's calm defiance disarmed her more than anger ever could. For a while, the only sound was the fire snapping in the hearth. Then, quietly, Ava asked, "Why are you helping me?" Ethan stared into the flames. "Because someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it." She studied his face, the faint scar near his temple, the tiredness in his eyes. There was pain there, buried deep. "Who?" she whispered. He didn't look up. "My wife. Before she died." Ava said nothing. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken grief. When he finally stood, his shadow fell over her face. "You don't have to trust me," he said, his voice soft, almost kind. "But you can rest here until you're ready to move again." As he walked away, Ava stared at the fire, her reflection flickering in its glow. She had built her entire life around control, dominance, and perfection. Now she was forced to rely on a man she barely knew, one who carried his own brokenness quietly, like a scar he no longer tried to hide. That night, as the storm outside faded into silence, Ava realized something she hadn't felt in years: she wasn't afraid of the quiet anymore. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, painting soft golden lines across the wooden walls. Ava woke to the smell of coffee and the faint sound of laughter, Lily's laughter. It had become her morning melody, light and full of life. She turned her head and saw Ethan outside, kneeling beside his daughter as they fed the chickens. The sight felt unreal to her, so ordinary, so far from the glass towers and marble floors she once ruled. Her phone sat useless on the table, still dead from the night of the crash. No calls, no meetings, no board updates. No one from her world even knew where she was. For the first time in years, there was silence. Later, when Ethan came inside, Ava watched him quietly. His hands were scratched, his shirt damp from the morning mist. He placed a cup of coffee on the table near her without a word. She studied him for a moment before finally asking, "You said your wife helped you. What happened to her?" Ethan's expression shifted, just slightly. He leaned against the counter, eyes distant. "I was a firefighter. There was a fire downtown, a big one. I got most of the people out, but when I went back in, the ceiling collapsed. She was there too. She didn't make it." Ava's throat tightened. She hadn't expected honesty so raw, so direct. "And after that, you came here." He nodded. "Lily was 3. I couldn't stay in the city. Everything reminded me of her. The noise, the sirens, the smell of smoke. I needed quiet. She needed peace." Ava looked down at her hands. "You built this whole life out here. Just you and her." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, it's not much, but it's honest." She let out a shaky breath. "Honest?" she repeated softly. "I can't remember the last time anything in my life was honest." He looked at her, not judging, just waiting. And before she realized it, words began to spill out, about her father's company, the endless pressure to succeed, the nights she spent chasing deals and deadlines while the world outside blurred away. "I thought power meant freedom," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But I was just building a cage and locking myself inside it." Ethan didn't respond right away. He just watched her, his gaze steady, grounding. Then he said quietly, "Maybe now you've got a chance to start over." She laughed bitterly. "Start over? Look at me. I can't even stand on my own 2 feet." He walked over and crouched beside her chair. "Then let's start with that." He held out his hand. She hesitated, staring at it, rough, calloused, strong. Slowly, she placed her fingers in his. His grip was firm, but gentle, guiding her as she pushed against the edge of the table. Her legs trembled, pain flared, but he didn't let go. "Easy," he murmured. "Don't rush it, just feel the ground again." Her breathing grew uneven. She could barely stand for 5 seconds before collapsing back into the chair, but Ethan caught her before she fell. Her heart raced, and for a brief second, their eyes met, close enough for her to see the faint line of a smile tug at his lips. "You did good," he said softly. She wanted to deny it, to insist she hadn't done anything. But the warmth in his tone stopped her. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not as a CEO, not as someone powerful, but as a person struggling to stand. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's hand reaching for hers, steady and sure. The world that once felt cold and mechanical now felt human again. And though she didn't understand why, she found herself wishing that morning wouldn't come too fast. Weeks drifted by, each one softer than the last. The snow outside the cabin had melted into streams of silver water that ran down the hills, and the forest began to bloom again. Ava could finally move with crutches now, her steps slow but determined. Every day she pushed herself a little more, and every day Ethan was there, steady, patient, never once letting her fall. Lily followed her like a little shadow, cheering each time she managed another step. "See, Daddy, she's walking," Lily squealed one morning, clapping her hands. Ava laughed, breathless, wiping a tear she hadn't realized was there. It had become a rhythm between them, the mornings filled with light and laughter, the afternoons with quiet work. Ava helped Lily with her reading, using the same discipline she once gave to corporate presentations. Ethan, meanwhile, spent hours outside repairing the fence or fixing the old truck. Sometimes, Ava would just watch him through the window, how he moved, how he always looked at his daughter with that calm strength. It was a peace she never knew existed. But as the days grew warmer, a knot began to form in her chest. The world she had left behind was waiting. Somewhere beyond those woods were her offices, her staff, her responsibilities. Eventually, someone would come looking for her, or worse, forget she existed at all. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Ava sat outside with Ethan. The air smelled of pine and smoke, the firelight flickering between them. She stared at her hands, still scarred from the accident. "I'll have to go back soon," she said quietly. Ethan didn't look surprised. "I figured, I can't stay here forever," she continued, almost to herself. "I have a company to run. People depend on me." He nodded slowly. "And what about you? What do you depend on?" The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. For a moment, all she could hear was the wind moving through the trees. "You built something incredible," Ethan said after a pause. "But maybe it's time to build something that makes you happy." She turned her head to look at him. His face was calm, his eyes steady, reflecting the fire's glow. "You think I can just walk away from everything? I think you can walk towards something better," he said softly. The words lingered in the air, warm and heavy. A few days later, she asked him to drive her into town. The ride was quiet. It had been so long since she'd seen the world beyond the forest, the shops, the streets, the endless motion of people chasing something. It felt foreign now. At the small cafe in town, Ava reached for her phone, newly charged. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of emails. Her company had survived without her. For the first time, that realization didn't sting, it felt freeing. Ethan watched her quietly, sipping his coffee. "You're thinking about going back, aren't you?" She nodded, but not the same way. She looked at him, her voice firm but soft. "I want to change things. Build something that matters. Something honest." A faint smile touched his lips. "Sounds like you've already started." When they returned to the cabin, Lily ran to her, hugging her leg tightly. "You'll come back, right?" she asked, her eyes wide. Ava knelt down carefully, brushing Lily's hair from her face. "Of course I will," she smiled gently. "I think I have a new family to visit now." That night, as she packed her few things, Ethan stood by the doorway. "The city's not an easy place," he said. "Neither is here," she replied with a half smile. "But both have something worth fighting for." They didn't say goodbye. They didn't have to. There was a quiet understanding between them, something unfinished but real. As the morning light broke across the hills, Ava looked back at the cabin one last time. The man who had saved her life stood on the porch, his daughter waving beside him. For the first time in years, Ava didn't feel like she was leaving something behind. She felt like she was going towards something new. Months passed before the world finally saw Ava Sinclair again. The woman who stepped onto the stage at her company's charity gala was not the same one who had once ruled from glass offices and chrome towers. She moved carefully, a faint limp tracing every step, but her presence was still commanding, strong, elegant, and entirely human. Cameras flashed, the crowd murmured, and the whispers spread like wildfire. The CEO who vanished had returned. The hall was filled with light, crystal chandeliers shimmering above the guests, and yet Ava felt a calm stillness inside her, something she'd only known in one place, Ethan's cabin in the woods. She took her place at the podium, her speech already written, but when she looked at the neatly printed words before her, she didn't read them. Instead, she spoke from the heart. "I used to think power meant control," she began, her voice steady, reaching every corner of the silent room. That success was about winning, and leadership was about being untouchable. But life has a way of humbling you. Sometimes it takes losing everything, your strength, your certainty, even your ability to stand, to learn what truly matters. The crowd was still, listening. She took a slow breath, her gaze finding something, or rather, someone, at the back of the room. Near the doorway stood Ethan, dressed simply in a dark jacket, holding Lily's small hand. They looked out of place among the tuxedos and sequins, yet somehow, they were the only real thing there. Ava smiled softly before continuing. When I couldn't walk, someone carried me. When I couldn't see a future, someone reminded me what kindness looked like. That's why I'm standing here today, not because I'm strong, but because someone shared their strength with me. Her words hung in the air like a quiet confession. The audience erupted into applause, but Ava hardly heard them. Her eyes stayed on Ethan, who gave her a small, almost shy smile. After the event, she slipped away from the glittering crowd, finding him near the back garden where the city lights met the night sky. Lily ran ahead and threw her arms around Ava. "You look like a princess," she said, grinning. Ava laughed, kneeling carefully to hug her. "And you look like my lucky charm." Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. "You spoke like someone who's finally free." She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "I am, but it feels strange without you two around." He smiled faintly. "The woods miss you. The chickens too." Ava chuckled softly, then grew quiet. "You were right," she said. "I was building the wrong kind of life. So, I changed it." He raised an eyebrow. "Changed it how?" "I started something new, a rescue foundation. For people who need help finding their strength again. I thought maybe you could run it." Ethan blinked, a small flicker of surprise crossing his face. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," she said, smiling. "You've already saved one life. I think you could save a few more." For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, quietly, he said, "You know, Lily's been asking when we'll see you again." Ava looked down at the little girl, who was now tugging at Ethan's sleeve. "Daddy, can we stay with her tonight?" Ethan laughed softly. "Maybe for a while," he said, looking at Ava with warmth that said more than words ever could. The three of them stood together under the soft city glow, no grand promises, no declarations, just an understanding that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Later that night, when the crowd was gone and the city was quiet, Ava stood on the balcony overlooking the skyline. She could still see Ethan's reflection behind her in the glass, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "I didn't find the strength to recover," she said softly, echoing her speech from earlier. "You gave it to me." Ethan squeezed her shoulder gently. "And you gave me something too, hope." Their eyes met in the reflection, two broken souls who had rebuilt themselves through each other. The night breeze carried the faintest sound of Lily's laughter from inside, light and free. Ava turned, smiling up at him, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel like a CEO or a survivor. She just felt alive, and somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of everything she never knew she wanted.